The chamber was vast, a cathedral of glass and steel that floated above the capital world of the Galactic Concord. Within its vaulted halls, representatives of 1,000 species had gathered under banners of peace. Voices hummed in a dozen dialects, deals whispered, treaties argued, and the illusion of unity shimmered like fragile crystal. And then the crystal shattered. The human diplomat, Ambassador Elias Rourke, rose to speak. His figure was calm, his posture precise, his voice steady as he carried humanity's words across the chamber. The other species tolerated humans, dismissed them as backwater pragmatists who had clawed their way into the stars too late to matter. Rourke knew it. Every delegate knew it. But still he spoke, because words mattered. Because peace mattered. Until the shot rang out. A beam of light cut through the chamber's serenity, striking Rourke in the chest. His body jerked once, then collapsed against the polished floor with a hollow, echoing thud. Silence swept the room, shocked, horrified silence, not of grief, but of fear. Then chaos erupted. Guards scrambled, dignitaries fled, accusations erupted. Somewhere, someone shouted that it had been an accident. Others hissed that humans should not have been present at all. Few voices rose in sympathy. Most were drowned beneath the weight of suspicion and disdain. For humanity, there was no doubt. It was no accident. It was an assassination. News traveled faster than light. On Earth, the footage was replayed across every city, every colony, every outpost among the stars. Billions watched Elias Rourke's final breath, the way he fell unguarded in a hall that promised safety. Billions felt the weight of humiliation and betrayal. In the great halls of the United Terran Directorate, leaders sat in grim silence. Some called for restraint, for evidence, for diplomacy. But their voices were drowned beneath the roar of a civilization that had endured centuries of being ignored, belittled, underestimated. The galaxy had laughed at humanity, called them naive. But now the laughter had ended. 3 nights after the assassination, the galaxy tuned once more to a broadcast. It was not from the Concord, nor from any empire, nor from the noble thrones of ancient species. It was from Earth. On every screen, the image of Chancellor Alina Vey appeared, a woman of silver hair and iron eyes, her voice resonant, her tone unyielding. We came to the stars seeking peace. We came with open hands and honest words. And in return, you murdered one of our own, in your hall, under your protection. We will not forget. We will not forgive. You believed humanity weak, divided, irrelevant. You believed you could strike us and suffer no consequence. You were wrong. From this day forth, the galaxy will know war. A war without treaties. A war without ceasefire. A war without end, until justice itself is eternal. To those who stood idle as our ambassador bled, you are complicit. To those who mocked our grief, you will taste our fury. We declare this not as a threat. We declare it as law. Humanity rises. And we will never stop. Her words echoed across the void. In the Concord chamber, alien delegates listened in stunned silence. Some scoffed, still clinging to arrogance. Others felt a chill crawl down their spines. The humans had not spoken in the tone of politics. They had spoken in the tone of inevitability. The fleets moved before dawn. Hidden in the darkness of uncharted systems, Earth's armadas stirred like ancient beasts. Sleek carriers, colossal dreadnoughts, ships built not for show but for survival, vessels forged in the crucible of endless wars on their homeworld. Humanity had always fought, from the moment their species first sharpened stone to the day they launched missiles into orbit. They had been tempered by blood and history, and now, in silence, they revealed what they had always prepared for. No announcement preceded their mobilization. No permission was sought. Humanity did not ask. They acted. The first targets were not worlds, not capitals, not monuments. They were supply routes, communication relays, orbital depots, the veins and nerves of galactic power. Entire sectors blinked into silence overnight as human warships descended, precise and merciless. The Concord scrambled fleets to intercept. They expected resistance, perhaps a few skirmishes before humanity was beaten back into obscurity. But when their cruisers emerged from warp, they did not find frightened Terran ships. They found hunters. The Battle of Varen's Gate lasted 27 minutes. The Concord lost 40 ships. Humanity lost none. Fear spread. Rumors swirled. How had humans built such fleets in secrecy? How had they mastered tactics that seemed to anticipate every move before it was made? Whispers grew of ancient strategies, of simulations run for centuries, of a species obsessed with survival in a galaxy that had never wanted them. In the markets of Tshara, alien traders muttered that humanity had no capital to defend. They carried their strength within mobile armadas, impossible to corner. On the streets of Doro Prime, citizens watched the Terran Declaration again and again, wondering if perhaps it had not been madness but prophecy. And on Earth, silence reigned. Not celebration, not revelry, not triumph. Only grim determination. Humanity did not fight for glory. They fought because an oath had been broken, because blood had been spilled unjustly. They fought because they would rather burn the stars themselves than kneel to mockery and assassination. The galaxy had underestimated them. That mistake would not be repeated. But it was already too late. The silence was broken. And from the ruins of diplomacy, war without end had begun. The galaxy had seen wars before. Empires clashed, coalitions rose and fell, rebellions bled in the shadows. But all of them had followed the same rhythm: conflict, stalemate, treaty, peace. War had always been a means to an end. Humanity's war was different. It had no end. The Concord assembled its grand fleet in the Ureth system, banners raised high, armadas stretching across the void in a dazzling array of firepower. War drums echoed in broadcasts across the stars. A decisive victory was imminent, they declared, one that would put the Terran upstarts back in their place. Admiral Saruin of the Vare Dominion sneered during his address to the Council. They are primitives with borrowed ships. They do not understand warfare on this scale. When our fleets descend, they will scatter like insects before the flame. The Council applauded. The galaxy believed. But when the fleets clashed, the galaxy learned. The battle began with silence. No posturing, no declarations. Just the void itself, calm, cold, endless. Then, without warning, a Terran strike group emerged from warp. Dozens of ships, maneuvering with impossible precision, cut through the Concord's forward lines like a blade through cloth. Alien admirals laughed at first, convinced it was a suicide run. But then their sensors screamed. The Terrans weren't attacking randomly, they were dismantling the fleet's command lattice. One by one, Concord flagships fell silent, their comms sliced, their coordination unraveled. Within hours, the Grand Fleet was reduced to scattered fragments, ships fleeing in disarray. Humanity's ships vanished as quickly as they had arrived, leaving behind burning hulks and stunned survivors. The Battle of Ureth was not remembered for its scale but for its humiliation. It was the day the galaxy realized humans had studied them, every maneuver, every doctrine, every habit, and turned their knowledge into a weapon sharper than steel. On Earth, there were no cheers. Only silence. Every loss of alien life was recorded, weighed, remembered. Humanity did not delight in slaughter, but they embraced necessity. In the shadows of military command, Admiral Kalandra spoke words that spread like wildfire among Terran ranks. We do not fight for victory. We fight for memory. For Elias Rourke. For every word dismissed, every hand slapped away, every insult carved into our name. We are not here to end this war. We are here to make it eternal. Alien leaders grew desperate. They convened in hidden chambers, whispering of truces and backroom deals. Some urged to offer humanity concessions, territories, resources, apologies. But others scoffed. They are only human. They cannot fight forever. And yet, evidence said otherwise. In the moons of Dravik, a Terran fleet struck down an entire orbital foundry, crippling the supply lines of the Tshan Dominion. On the gas mines of Brask, Terran commandos descended like shadows, crippling infrastructure and vanishing before defenders could even mobilize. Every strike was calculated, every wound deliberate. Humanity was not waging total war. They were waging endless war, death by 1,000 cuts, slow suffocation, relentless attrition. The galaxy trembled. In the dark taverns of frontier worlds, smugglers whispered that human fleets had no home ports, no dependency on Concord stations. They lived in motion, sustained by colonies hidden in forgotten corners of the void. Like wolves, they carried their lairs with them. On the diplomatic channels, emissaries begged humanity to come to the table. The Terrans never answered. Their silence was louder than any refusal. And in the corridors of power, fear grew. For every empire, every dominion, every counselor asked the same question. If the humans are not fighting for peace, what are they fighting for? The answer came at the siege of Karis. Karis was a jewel world, a fortress defended by fleets and orbital cannons, the pride of the Zorati Empire. It had never fallen, not in 1,000 years. Its defenders believed their walls unbreakable. But when the Terrans came, they did not assault the walls. They dismantled the ground beneath them. Human engineers unleashed a storm of kinetic strikes, not against the fortresses, but the tectonic plates below. Shockwaves rippled through Karis. Mountains cracked, oceans boiled, cities crumbled under the weight of nature turned weapon. Within 3 days, the jewel of the Zorati Empire was gone. Not conquered. Not enslaved. Erased. Billions of refugees fled into the void, carrying with them the tale of humanity's wrath. For the first time, the galaxy understood, humanity was not interested in ruling. Humanity was interested in scarring. Still, humanity did not celebrate. In the silence of command rooms, their leaders marked Karis with grim eyes. A price had been paid. A line had been crossed. But no one flinched. The message was carved into the stars themselves. You killed one of ours. Now we will make eternity remember him. Across the galaxy, resistance fractured. Some empires pulled their fleets inward, choosing isolation over confrontation. Others clung to defiance, hurling armadas into the void, desperate for redemption. But everywhere, the pattern repeated. The humans struck first, struck fast, struck decisively. Then they vanished, leaving silence and fear in their wake. It was not victory. It was inevitability. And so the galaxy whispered of a new age, the age of endless war. Markets crumbled. Old alliances shattered. The Concord Council chambers sat empty, its banners gathering dust. Where once there had been talk of peace and prosperity, now there was only fear of shadows on the horizon, of Terran ships slipping between the stars. And humanity, silent and unyielding, pressed forward. Because they had sworn an oath. And to humanity, an oath was forever. The galaxy had changed. Where once there were bustling trade lanes, now there were graveyards of shattered hulls drifting in silence. Where once empires boasted of prosperity, now their citizens whispered in fear, watching the stars as if expecting Terran shadows to descend at any moment. The Concord, the ancient institution that had bound civilizations together for millennia, was a corpse. Its banners were torn, its council chambers abandoned. No empire trusted another. Alliances fractured, species blamed one another for drawing humanity's fury, and through it all, the Terran fleets moved like ghosts, never resting, never ceasing. The galaxy had wars before. But never one like this. Admiral Saruman of the Vair Dominion, who once mocked humanity as insects before the flame, stared hollow-eyed at a report of his shattered worlds. His fleets were gone, his home burned. The flame he once promised had consumed him instead. In the ruins of the Zorati Empire, refugee caravans fled endlessly, driven not by pursuit but by memory, the memory of Caris, their jewel world erased beneath the Terran storm. They spoke not of fighting back but of surviving the shadow. And in the heart of the galaxy, Chancellor Alina Vey prepared her next address. The galaxy watched in dread. Every word she spoke had become prophecy. Her image filled the stars once more. Her eyes burned not with hatred, but with something colder, conviction. You believed our rage would fade. That time would soften us. You were wrong. This war does not end. Not with treaties. Not with apologies. Not with reparations. We gave you a chance for peace, and you murdered it with a single shot. That crime cannot be undone. So understand this, we do not fight for conquest. We do not fight for empire. We fight so that no corner of the galaxy can forget what was done. We fight until every star bears witness. Humanity will be eternal in war. And war will be eternal with us. The words carried like a curse. And the galaxy trembled. For decades, battles raged. Worlds rose and fell, fleets clashed and vanished, and through it all, the Terrans remained relentless. Unlike other species, they did not measure time in battles won or lost. They measured it in scars carved into the galaxy's memory. They struck not just with weapons but with symbols. On the world of Taros, where the Council once dismissed Ambassador Rourke as irrelevant, humanity descended, dismantled every government building, and left the rest of the city untouched. The message was clear: we remember. On the fortress moon of Drelkash, they bypassed military might entirely, seizing the archives that chronicled 10,000 years of galactic history. Within weeks, the archives broadcasted a new record across the stars: the assassination, replayed endlessly, marked as the day the galaxy's fate was sealed. The aliens called it indoctrination. Humanity called it justice. But even humanity was not untouched. The endless war consumed generations. Children born on starships never saw Earth with their own eyes. Soldiers fought knowing there would be no return, no peace awaiting them. A whisper haunted even the most hardened veterans: had they become what they despised? Yet every time doubt rose, they replayed the image of Elias Rourke's fall. They remembered the chamber of laughter and indifference, the voices that dismissed human grief. And their conviction returned, sharper than ever. The climax came at the siege of Orion, the last stronghold of the once mighty Concord. Orion was a world of legends, a place where peace treaties had been signed for centuries. Its skies were shielded by an armada of surviving empires, a desperate coalition of species who had lost everything but pride. They called it the final stand. When humanity arrived, the stars themselves seemed to darken. Entire fleets of Terran dreadnoughts poured into the system, their formations perfect, their silence suffocating. No speeches were given. No threats were issued. The war spoke for itself. The coalition fought with desperation, with fury, with the raw strength of survival. But desperation could not overcome precision. Fury could not break inevitability. Ships burned. Armadas fell. Orion's skies were filled with fire. At the heart of the chaos, a single Terran flagship broadcast a message. There will be no final stand. There will only be memory. And then the bombardment began. Orion was not destroyed. Humanity could have shattered it, as they had Caris. Instead, they left its city standing, its people alive. But above its skies, they burned a message into the surface of the moon, an endless scar of fire visible from the planet's surface. It read, in every galactic tongue: war without end. The coalition surrendered. Not because they were defeated, they had already known defeat. They surrendered because they understood. Humanity did not seek their destruction. Humanity sought their eternity. And eternity they would have. Years turned into decades, decades into centuries. The war did not stop. It became the rhythm of the galaxy, a constant storm that reshaped everything. New species rose into the stars only to learn the first lesson of existence: do not cross humanity. Old empires withered, their histories overshadowed by one name that endured above all: humanity. Some whispered of vengeance, of plans to unite and crush them once and for all. But those whispers faded when they saw the scars across the stars, the ruined fleets that drifted endlessly, monuments of failure carved into the void. Humanity had become more than a species. They had become a force of nature. And so, in the silence of her final years, Chancellor Alina Vey recorded one last message, one never broadcast, one intended only for the archives of Earth. Perhaps, one day, our children will find peace again. Perhaps the galaxy will finally learn what it cost us to teach this lesson. But until then, we remain eternal in war, not because we wished it, but because they forced it upon us. And eternity remembers. Her words were sealed, her legacy carved. Humanity marched on. The galaxy would forever tell the story of Elias Rourke, the ambassador who fell. And of a species who rose from his blood to wage a war that would never end. Not a war of conquest. Not a war of greed. But a war of memory. A war without end.